My name's Tim Jones. I head up technical services here at Iaas, and I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to spend a bit of time with you today talking about Iaas hosted solutions. It's something that we've been working on within Iaas Group for some time, and as Sam said, there's an awful lot of interest and a lot of demand already for this service. So it's really nice to be able to share this with you for the first time today. It's probably worth just talking quickly about hosting. There's lots of different types of this service, but in essence what it allows you to do is to take those applications, including of course Exchequer, and all your documents, your storage, your data, other business line applications that you may use, and lift them off those servers that you've got situated physically in your offices and move them over into a highly secure, resilient and scalable data centre. So as I said, it's something we're really excited about. We launched it to Exchequer customers for the first time just a couple of weeks ago, and we've already signed our first Exchequer customer onto the hosted solution. So in terms of what I'd like to cover over the next sort of 20 minutes or so, first I'd like to talk about traditional IT delivery. So that's probably where most of us find ourselves today. We've probably got our own servers situated in our own offices, running our own applications, and we either support them ourselves or we pay a third-party organisation to support those for us. We'll then talk about a hosted service. So I mentioned that there's lots of different types of this service. You've probably all heard of Saas and utility computing and cloud and so on. So it's probably important just to look at what this hosted service includes. I'll then go on to talk about what Iaas Hosted Solutions itself comprises and the sort of service that we can provide you within this. And then we'll look at some of the benefits that we believe we can drive into your organisation should you choose hosting. So, first of all, traditional IT delivery. I think that first of all, this will be a fairly familiar picture to most of you. So I guess that most people have either got a single office, a main office location, you may have a head office with other offices, and that's where all of your infrastructure currently sits, in that main location. So that's running your applications, it's running Exchange email, that's where you store all your documents. And probably what you'll have is a bunch of people who've got PCs and laptops who connect into those servers through a local area network. Then as our businesses have changed, we may have opened other remote offices, we may have made acquisitions, and then those other offices also need access to those applications. So they either come in through a dedicated line, perhaps into your main office, or they may come in through a VPN across the internet to gain access to those applications. You'll also have increasingly, I guess, remote workers now. So you'll have people working from different locations who again need to get in and access your applications and your data. And then as is the trend, as we try and reduce office space, we've probably got home workers, perhaps home workers so that you can cover geographical areas, and again they need to get in to access your applications. And I think the key thing is that perhaps 10 years ago people used to dial into the office to do some small task, whereas now of course everybody expects to get full access to those applications no matter where they're situated. What we'll look at now is some of the challenges associated with that sort of model. Again, I think it's probably challenges that we're probably all familiar with. So just to pick up on some of these, first of all, we've got the upfront and ongoing costs associated with those servers that are situated in our offices. It's actually a pretty big investment when you buy new servers. It's a pretty big investment, it's all capital expenditure. It's something that we have to budget for. And we find that as our businesses change, as our businesses grow, then we find that we outgrow those servers perhaps, or we need to install new applications, and we find that then we're into a cycle of then replacing that infrastructure. We know that that of course is an incredibly costly exercise, and if we haven't budgeted properly for it, then we see some cost spikes within our business that perhaps we're not prepared for. It's also, it's not just the hardware, it's the software as well. So with this hardware we need to buy Microsoft operating systems, we need to buy Office licenses and everything else that is associated with that. And again, it's all capital expenditure. It's probably fair to say that renewals obviously are costly, but equally mistakes are costly. We may actually buy some servers, and at that point in time that's the right thing for us. But again, if our business changes quite quickly, then we find that we're actually in a position where we've got servers that don't meet our business's needs. We've then got the challenge of keeping up with technology. We know that all throughout the history of IT, the pace of change is actually quite quick. hardware becomes dated, and again that forces us into this cycle of having to replace our infrastructure. Software becomes increasingly more resource hungry, and again that actually prompts us to have to change the technology that we've got in place. Also an issue, I guess, is software itself. So lots of people will have invested perhaps in Office 2003 at some point, or Office 2007. No sooner have you done that than Microsoft has a great idea and brings out Office 2010. And of course we carry on with Office 2007 for a while, but then of course people start to use the new file extensions, you get incompatibilities, and again we're forced actually to move up to the latest versions. And again that's capital expenditure, that's money that we need to invest in those software licenses. We then have the challenge of end user knowledge. So some people may be fortunate enough to have dedicated IT staff within our business, and they're quite expensive resources, and what we often find is that those people are consumed with day-to-day activities, resetting passwords, loading printer drivers, and really if you've got an expensive resource like that, then what you really want is to have those people working on the added value sort of activities that really sort of drive change within your business and your IT strategy. Lots of people won't be fortunate enough to have dedicated IT staff, and what we often find then is that we have people that work in a certain department, perhaps accounts. They're pretty good with technology, so they by default become the go-to person for all the sort of IT issues within the business, and would it be fantastic if we could free those people up again to actually concentrate on the core jobs that we've actually employed them to do. We've then got the challenge of security, and particularly backups. I think that these days everybody carries out a backup, but I guess the question I would ask is, are we sure that we're absolutely backing up the right things? We may well think that we do, but I know from my experiences looking after technical services that when people lose their systems and we go back and reload it and we put all the data back on, inevitably often there's things that people expected to be there that are actually missing, so just another challenge for us. We then got the issue of version control. So I mentioned that we have to make an investment in our software licenses, and in my experience what we often find is that when people replace their infrastructure, they draw a line in the sand at that point in time, and they make sure that all the people in their business are properly licensed. We make sure that we've got the right number of copies of Office, we make sure that we've got the right number of sort of Exchange licenses and things. But of course then as time goes on and people leave the business, new people come in, equipment gets replaced, we often find that we install software and we kind of lose track of where we need to be around license compliance. And I guess we all know that if ever we were audited, that if you're found to be not properly licensed, then of course the penalties and the fines can be pretty severe. We then got business continuity. So we've talked about backups and actually getting our servers back, but do we all really have a clear plan for what would happen if we lost our servers tomorrow? Would we know that within sort of a 24-hour period we can put all of those actions in place that gets our business up and running and back to where we need to be? We've then obviously got to find space for this IT equipment. I guess many of us will pay for our office space on a square foot rental basis, and so we're actually paying to store those servers on the floor space somewhere within our organisations. Again, would it be better if we could actually free up that space to either use it more effectively for something else or actually reduce the amount of office space that we need? Then of course we get other sort of hidden costs. So we talked about the cost of the servers and the software, but then there's also the cost of, say, insuring that as well. So all these sort of build into that total cost of ownership that you've got with this traditional delivery model. So I just wanted to touch on some of those things. I think it's probably pretty familiar to most of you.